You're listening to The Endless Party with your hosts,
Megan Elijah Armstrong. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Endless Party. Today is episode 53, and it is going to be called The Order Party.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of reasons as to why we wanted to emphasize
order.
Yeah, mainly because we moved house.
Yes. So
apartment, we should say, not house.
So last week we have some really good friends, and long story short, they hooked us up and with this great landlord who gave us an apartment that was more space for less money. And we decided to move on a Sunday night, and that next Monday at 4 p.m. we had moved.
Mm-hmm.
And there were tons of reasons why we decided to move, even though moving at this time with 2 newborns is not ideal. But we decided to just make this decision. And there were 3 things we really liked about our old place. Number 1.
And we quickly outgrew them.
But there were 3 things we really liked about our old place. Number 1, it was super close to the hospital. So when our babies were in the NICU, it was really convenient because we were about 2 minutes away from the hospital.
Same thing with the freeway. We were right next to the freeway, and we had a bunch of appointments 45 minutes away in Idaho Falls.
Right.
And so it made it convenient as well.
Absolutely. So number 2, it was great to have a space and be independent and just get to live there. And then number 3, my favorite reason, is that apartment was so bad that
it was literal poop.
It was so bad that it ended up kind of kicking us into gear and making us jumpstart on our dreams, like starting this podcast and a couple other ventures, because we were in that living situation and we wanted to get out more than anything. Yeah. And so that really just kicked us into gear to start. And I wanted to talk about just a couple things in that apartment. Number 1, there's a lot of reasons why it wasn't our favorite.
There's a million
reasons. But we're just going to go over a couple.
Yeah.
Number 1, the ceilings were about 6.5 feet tall. Elijah and I are about 5. He's 5'6", and I'm, 5'3", because I've grown, which is that's another story. So the ceilings were really low, and obviously it was in a basement, and so it was really dark, and it kind of felt like a little hole, if I'm being honest. It felt like a hole. It was worse than a hole.
It was so bad.
What was so bad about it?
Everything. I could palm the ceilings, and I'm not a tall man at all.
So we had mice in our ceilings, which
I had to take care of.
Elijah had to take care of.
Because our landlords didn't.
Our sink broke. I got trapped in the
also
bathroom.
I had to take care of.
I got trapped in the bathroom because the door handle broke. It just broke.
Off in the door.
I think I should just tell this story really quick so that we have it. So it's 1 a.m. The babies have been crying for about 6 hours. Maybe not 6, but probably 4. And we've been holding them, loving them, and it's 1 a.m. And I'm like, you know what, Elijah, let's just go in the bathroom and brush our teeth for 2 minutes, and we'll leave them on the bed. They'll be fine. Let's just take a break for 2 minutes. So we go into the bathroom and we finish brushing our teeth. Elijah finishes before me, and he leaves and closes the door so I don't hear the crying. And I go to leave the bathroom.
And I just hear this
and I'm stuck. I'm trapped in the bathroom at 1 a.m.
Elijah.
And all of my family is behind the door, and of course 30 minutes later the babies are ready to eat, and so I'm stuck in the bathroom. And long story short, there's this teeny tiny window in the old bathroom. I hop off the toilet and go out the window that's probably about this big.
I couldn't have fit.
He couldn't have fit.
There's no way.
I shimmy out in my underwear onto the snow in the backyard of our rental, run through the snow in my underwear at 1 a.m. and get back inside. Anyways, that was a whole tangent. So the door handle broke. It was really a quite small place. And honestly, it wasn't too bad when Elijah and I were living there. I mean, it was still bad, but then when the twins came, it was too small. We outgrew it really quick.
And I will say this too. There were 2 dogs.
Oh, yes.
That barked for 7 hours a day.
Yes.
They were let out by our landlords. And here's a note. Why are they called landlords? I feel like that's very extreme.
I do too.
Lord of the land. That's pretty intense. Anyways.
I would agree with that.
So they had 2 dogs. and they were horrible dogs, like just nightmare dogs.
They would bark
and our landlords knew.
Our landlords would tell us.
They were like, yeah, we like sorry about our dogs. We hate our dogs. Like many times they're like, we hope they run away and get hit by a car. Like it was like it that was severe. They just weren't good animals.
It was so severe that another neighbor who had a dog had to muzzle his dog because their dogs
would egg it on all the time. Other dog.
So all of the houses surrounding this apartment, you could hear the dogs. Oh, there were also college parties. We lived near a campus, and
football house.
So we lived near a football house. So 1 a.m. there would be parties going on because. What better time to get down than, in the early morning. So, anyways, all this to be said, we made the decision to move.
Yeah.
And there's a point to all of this.
Yeah, and so we finally moved house Monday. Like, it was like less than 24 hours.
24 hours
like,
later,
boom,
I was like,
we're gone.
We're leaving.
So we moved to this place that we're currently filming in. And it was just night and day difference. Like a weight was lifted off of our shoulders as soon as we got here.
Like we moved in and that night we were just giddy. We were so happy. Like we couldn't stop smiling because we didn't realize just the weight that environment had on us.
So we arrive and then we realize, we have to unpack our entire house. But we actually have a bunch of stuff in storage because the place we lived in Utah was ginormous. And then when we were there, apparently we just filled our space and now we have all the things.
Right.
And so we put a bunch of stuff in storage when we moved here to Idaho. And so we decided to go through everything, see what we would use here, see what we wouldn't use here, and really just kind of put ourselves in order.
Yes.
And so that's obviously why this is called the order party.
Yes.
And we literally took out the whole week because moving a house with twins, you have to stop every 2.5 to 3 hours minimum
to feed your babies,
to feed them, to be with
babies,
them, to just love them, because they're our top priority next to each other.
I feel like we could have gotten the task done of just organizing all of our belongings in probably like 2 days.
Yeah, if it was just us,
like
easily 2 days.
Moving, unpacking, and then organizing, I think it probably would have taken us 2 days.
Yeah.
But with our lovely little babies, it took
a week.
It took a solid week of just ordering.
We decided to go through everything, so we really did. And then finally, we just binged
so much stuff.
I don't even know how many boxes, 10 to 12 boxes of just stuff. We just went through
all of these things, and we were like, why do we have so much stuff?
We don't need this.
We don't want this.
We donated it. We threw it away. We really just put ourselves back in order. And obviously, a lot of things had to still go back in storage because eventually we are going to own a home in a bigger space. And so we just felt that we needed to put ourselves in order. But the things in storage now, we know exactly what's there. We know where it is. We know what it is.
Yes.
And so we just, again, it was like
another weight
was just lifted off of us. But then this immediately parallels with the real reason of why we wanted to talk about this. And it's really about just getting your life in order. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of I think he's a doctor. He's Dr. Peterson. I think he's a psychologist.
Yes.
And then he's written a book. He's written a couple books. He's huge in the media. Whether or not you agree with his politics is a different story. But he wrote a book called The 12 Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos, which we have here. And one of his 12 rules is, let me just read it for you. And it's, what's it called?
I think it's something to the effect of
set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world.
Yes.
And it's not just talking about your literal house, right? That's part of it for sure. Get your physical space in order before you go and criticize anybody else's space.
Right.
But it's more than that. It's getting your entire life in order. And he even goes on to, in a section of his chapter that says, clean up your life. And it really is just all about how you need to transform yourself and really just clean up any area of your life that is unorganized. And he says, start by asking yourself, he says, if the answer is no, here's something.
Okay, so let's just pause this and... Okay, so we're going to pick up right where we just left off. We had a very long 3-hour interruption, and this is why.
It was awesome.
So we have 2 cameras and 1 tripod, and because of that, Jimmy rigged a very poor system to...
Very poor tripod.
To stand the camera up, and it involved a chair, a space heater, probably 15 books, and a Valentine's Day decoration. And as you just heard, all of that came crashing down. So...
Valentine's Day decoration broke.
Then that crash proceeded to wake up our sleeping infants. And so we ended up changing them, feeding them, walking them outside. And we might include some footage of that in the YouTube. We'll see. But anyways, we're going to go back to Elijah, who was talking about order, which our life does not seem to have, but we're trying to create it.
Yeah. So right where we left off, it was one of the quotes from Jordan Peterson, and he says, start to stop doing what you know to be wrong. And in essence, if there's anything in your life that isn't aligned with your core values, then you should stop doing it. And here's what's interesting about this concept and this understanding is that we all know when we're doing something wrong. And this goes more in depth into Christianity a little bit, or just in regular life. For example, in Christianity, we believe that all people are born with the light of Christ or the Spirit of Christ. And that just means that you have an understanding of what's good and what's right, as well as what's wrong and what's bad. And so you can make the decision based on that feeling in your chest. And a lot of people call that your conscience. Pinocchio had one as well. His name was Geppetto.
That was Jiminy Cricket.
Oh. No, Geppetto was the guy who made Pinocchio. Jiminy Cricket was his conscience. But here's what's interesting. Jiminy Cricket was horrible.
Why?
He didn't even help him all that much.
Weirdly enough, I've never seen Pinocchio.
Pinocchio is actually kind of a creepy show.
That's what everyone
It's a creepy
says.
doll.
I've never seen it. So.
Anyways.
But I do know the conscience is not Geppetto.
Yeah. So we believe that it's the light of Christ. And ultimately, that's what can direct you in your life to know what's wrong and what's right. So if there's anything in your life that you know is wrong, change it. Put it in order. Get it fixed. Correct it.
Absolutely. So why we kind of talked about moving our house is because we kind of felt like it was a parallel to this order. Just as we threw out objects and got rid of stuff that were useless to us and that just didn't, make us better and make our home better, you too can get rid of things that you should get rid of. For example, should you get rid of a toxic relationship?
Absolutely.
Should you quit a job? Should you move? Should you,
overcome an addiction.
Should you overcome an addiction? There's a lot of things, and you know what they are. You know what things
personally,
you
know what you should be changing.
A good example is Elijah and I, one of the things that we had to get in order was actually our scrolling through social media.
Yeah.
And so that was...
It's so bum, guys.
It's so bum. And here we are creating content to listen. But our hope with this is that our stuff isn't...
We create content that can really benefit every human being.
You guys can let us know if we actually are. But that's our plan. Anyways, so that was something, just lately that we've been trying to cut out of our lives is just, endless scrolling on social media.
Well, it's actually interesting that we talked about moving house too. So now in no way, shape, or form do we believe that your environment determines your attitude. However, your environment can shape and hinder your attitude if you let it, right? And I think that janky basement apartment actually hindered us more than we realized.
Yes.
And it affected us more than we should have let it, but more than we also realized.
Absolutely.
And because of that, it was interesting, as Meg said kind of at the beginning of this podcast, we moved here and we were giddy. Like, we felt this weight lift off of our shoulders, and we just were in almost a state of euphoria. Like, wow, this is so much better. And quite frankly, this apartment's not all that nice. Like, it's way nicer than our previous one, but it's not like, wow, this is a high-end, high-class apartment. But my whole point is, we weren't as good as a couple. We weren't as good as parents. We weren't as good just overall people, because we were letting our environment shape us a little bit and affect us more than we should have. And because of that, we quickly got here and immediately started to realize where we needed to be better in our relationship, in our parenting, in every aspect of our life. And right after we got our house in order,
yes,
we were like, how do we get ourselves back in order? How do we get our babies back in order? How do we get our marriage back in order? And it's not like it was in shambles by any means.
No, but it's interesting how cleaning up that one aspect of our life that really did need to change allowed us to clean up. It
everything.
Inspired us to clean up everything.
Yeah.
And it was just one thing that we really decided to clean up,
That actually reminds me. So my dad, one of the things that he was huge on in his coaching was this understanding that the better person you are, the better athlete you'll be. And the better athlete you are, the better person you'll be. And that goes hand in hand with this. You improve one area of your life, it's a domino effect. You start to improve every area of your life.
True.
Because you see where you are lacking in other areas. For example, if you attend a seminar or if you listen to this podcast and you are, let's say, a salesman or some type of employee, and you feel inspired to just get your life in order, to do better, to read more books, to whatever it is, don't you think you'd be a better husband? Don't you think you'd be a better father, a better salesman, a better wife, a better mother, right? Just because you ultimately are like, wow, I need to be better. I need to improve. And that is going to force you to improve in all areas of your life.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. So, anyways, that whole understanding is that if you order your life in one area, everything else is going to fall into place.
Yes, so our challenge to you is to clean up those areas that could use a little dusting, a little binging, a little,
Yeah.
getting
well,
rid of some
actually,
things.
It's kind of like Meg said. I think that there's all of us know what we need to improve upon, and we can't tell you what that is for you. It's an individual matter, and you really have to take a hard look in the mirror and figure out what that problem is for yourself.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into something else we were going to talk about in terms of order is, so something I said, so this goes way back. So when we were first married, we got tons of advice.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm glad you brought this up. I totally spaced this.
Yeah, we were offered tons of advice, and after all of that advice, I realized that my advice to myself was to take no one's advice.
Yeah.
And if you choose to take this advice, it's going against what I just said. But just hear me out. I think in terms of order too, you have to find your own personal order.
Mm-hmm.
And the order that our family has, our relationship has, our parenting has, is going to look a lot different
than anybody else's.
And that's okay.
We're different people.
We all are different people. It should.
That's what makes the world so unique.
And something I've learned with parenting is that, we have incredible examples of parents and, even books that have taught us a lot about parenting. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we had to come to our own conclusion of what orderly parenting looks like.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is you will hear so much advice when you get married, when you have your first kid or kids, in our case. And here's kind of my understanding and what I try to do in my own life. If it's valid, use it. Why wouldn't you use great sound advice? But if it's not, toss it aside.
Toss it aside, just like junk in a house.
Yeah,
get rid of
exactly.
it.
That's the whole point behind this, and that's why we're trying to talk about order a little bit. Is you're going to receive so much information, so much guidance, so much quote unquote wisdom and experience, and some of it might be helpful, and then store that, keep it with you, because someday you'll use it. But the stuff that's not, disregard it. Don't give it another second thought at all. Just toss it to the wayside.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Yes, sorry for the interruption, but I think this one ultimately we had to get ours in order.
We did.
We had to order our.
We had to
put
some stuff
photos in order, or not photos, cameras in order, and everything else.
Also, subscribe so we can buy a new second tripod. That would be great.
Cool.
That'd be cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to The Endless Party. Please feel free to join us over at our website, theendlessparty.com, for more of our content. Also, we would love to hear from you. Leave some comments and let us know what you're interested in us talking about.
Seriously, like, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, whatever it is the platform says to do, so that we can keep partying together.